Welcome back to the Culture Report. I'm Josue Cuevas.
And I'm Shelly Schwartz. Now, you might be noticing that things look a little different this week, specifically that our usual host, Antonia, isn't here. Don't worry, she'll be back, but she's on a well-deserved vacay, so we decided that it's time to put the people who are usually behind the scenes on the other side of the camera.
Yeah, we're using this week as a chance to look back at some of our favorite conversations and topics so far this year, just in case you missed something. So welcome to our Producer Picks episode. First off, we're looking back at a major moment for culture this year, Kendrick Lamar's unforgettable Super Bowl halftime performance. Just in case you forgot, Kendrick's halftime performance features songs from his GNX album and from the high point with his beef with Drake with the song They're Not Like Us. In true Kendrick fashion, this halftime show was packed with history and made a statement. We had a chat with Spelman College professor and poet Sequoia Maynor about all the different meanings behind Kendrick's performance that some fans are probably still analyzing and thinking about all these months later.
So I was surprised and elated to see Samuel L. Jackson as Uncle Sam. I thought that kind of iconography was extremely powerful. And he's a character that comes to symbolize the trappings of a capitalist American system. Right. That at once upholds Black artists, Black entertainers, but also places these constraints and demands around them, right? So I think about Sam Jackson as Uncle Sam in this performance, and he says things to Kendrick like, you got to play this American game. You know, that you can't be too loud, too ghetto. You got to tighten up, right? And for me, that really was a powerful representation of all the kind of conflicting messages that Black artists who are so public and visible, like Kendrick Lamar, have to contend with in their performances, right?
I think something else that I've heard a lot of people talk about is this play on Gil Scott-Heron's poem, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. Kendrick, in his performance, says the revolution will be televised. You picked the right time, but the wrong guy. Gil Scott-Heron's poem is basically a call to action. What do you think Kendrick's switch means?
Yes, it's a call to action. But I think that he also says a lot more in that poem, right? He says, you won't be able to stay at home, right? You won't be able to plug in, turn on. The revolution's not going to be televised. And on the one hand, that means, right, all the action that's happening, it's going to be out in the street. If you want to participate in the remaking of an American system and American culture, you're going to have to actively participate, right? You can't be passive. There's no passive consumption in this. But I think that he's also saying that media narratives, which are on TV, are never going to tell the story of a true revolution that comes from the ground up, right? That it has to be lived, it has to be experienced, and that the translation of that story by an American media system is going to already be skewed and is not going to kind of advocate from a revolutionary perspective. So therefore, it won't be televised, right? Now, Kendrick's shift is so kind of interesting to me. And the fact that he ends with this demand, this call, turn the TV off, turn the TV off. But that demand to turn the TV off actually reminds me of Hair On again, right? Turn the TV off because the TV is controlling you. The TV is giving you narratives that are not all true, right? For me, I think the most powerful image of the entire performance was the group of dancers, and this was around the song Humble, right? At that time of the performance, the group of dancers forming that American flag, the red, white, and blue, and seeing that flag divided, right? With Kendrick in the middle, it really had me thinking about the extreme polarization in our nation. It had me thinking about the Black labor that undergirds this American nation, right? The Black labor that has built up this nation. It makes me think about the ways that at once Black entertainers are held up as exceptional, right? So often they're leading the kind of charge of innovation. They're leading the culture, right? They are the culture. And yet, if even if they are the fabric of the nation, right? The fabric of the flag, that flag disintegrates, right? That I think about the way that those dancers scattered at one point, right? And it wasn't just polarization, it was chaos, it was confusion. And I think that so often that's kind of the experience of the Black individual in this country, right? Striving, trying to be trying to be a citizen, right? Trying to be a patriot and proud of this nation, and yet feeling confused, feeling lost, feeling disorganized, feeling chaotic, right? So that was a really powerful symbol for me. So I think the one thing I would want people to take away is that Black excellence looks like all sorts of things, right? It can look loud, it can look flashy, it can look beautiful and elegant like Beyonce, right? It can look jazzy, it could look funky, but it could also look quiet, it could also look subtle. It could also look interior. And that's valuable too.
Another big pop culture moment was the release of Love on the Spectrum's third season. Something that's top of mind for a lot of people when it comes to TV, movies, and media in general is representation. Who's being represented and how are they being represented? Love on the Spectrum is one of many docuseries following people on their journey to love, but this one is unlike any other because it features people with autism. Antonia is a major Love on the Spectrum fan, so she reached out to one of its former participants and social media star, Kaylin Partlow, to find out if she thought the show actually represented folks with autism well. Now let me tell you, I've never seen Antonia so excited about anything than the moment she told us she was interviewing Kaylin. She still gets giddy when she talks about how cool of an experience it was, so we just had to include it.
With, social media, anyone and everyone can participate, which is both beautiful and a little bit frustrating at times. So everyone has the opportunity to tell their own story. Unfortunately, just the way social media works, the audience kind of decides whose stories get to be heard.
What was your time like on Love on the Spectrum? How did you find out about it? What compelled you to participate? Anything that you want to share about it?
It really wasn't that incredible of a story. I watched the Australian version. I thought it was fantastic. I sent an email, I did a couple of Zoom interviews, and things just moved very, very quickly. When people ask how it felt, typically I describe it as feeling sweaty, because you get nervous and your armpits start to sweat, and it was a very sweaty experience, but that doesn't mean it wasn't worth it. There were certainly parts that were challenging because you get thrown into new circumstances, you're meeting new people, you've got a camera crew in your bedroom asking you very personal questions. But I don't know, I was just kind of along for the ride, I guess.
There's an ongoing debate online about whether the show is like quote unquote exploitative for neurodivergent or autistic folks or a good representation of the community.
They told us, this is not a paid opportunity. This is participation in a docuseries. And as such, there is no compensation for that. And everybody was okay with it. And then in terms of representation, my thought has always been that when you gather a group of, say, 10 or so people, you're not going to hope that those 10 or so people are going to accurately reflect all the possibilities within one big group of people. And I think with more seasons being filmed, they'll be able to add more diverse perspectives. And additionally, on top of that, I also kind of think it will inspire more filmmakers to explore this area of neurodiversity and inspire people to make more, pieces of media surrounding autism.
I think traditionally, we all know there's been little to no media representation of people on the spectrum. And when there is, folks have often, been misrepresented or stereotyped. What do you think, as someone who has autism, do you think there's been any progress in recent years? What do you think is the biggest misrepresentation or something that people usually get wrong when they're portraying people on the spectrum?
I would say that progress in recent years has certainly been made, but I think at this point it's more about quantity than it is about quality. I think quality will come, but quantity has to be first. And I guess to answer that last part of your question, I kind of believe that the genius stereotype is way, way overdone. We've got Sheldon Cooper, we've got The Good Doctor, we've got Rain Man. And the unfortunate part about that is only about 10% of autistic people are said to have an advanced IQ. So I talk a lot on my social media about folks with profound autism, which is a distinction being made with people who are, traditionally what they would say as more on the severe end of the spectrum. And with a co-occurring intellectual disability, so IQ less than 50. These are folks who cannot speak for themselves. And so I would say in an ideal world, we tell those stories. Those are stories that are both not told by themselves and are just not told, period. There are some harsh realities that can accompany an autism diagnosis, whether you have high support needs or low support needs. And I think it would be important to kind of see those brought to life in a respectful way.
This year, Colorado made a big step forward in sports representation. We're getting our own national women's soccer team, Denver Summit FC, and fans are pumped about it.
In the past few years, it feels like women's sports have really taken a step into the spotlight, but it's not like they weren't there before. Representation was just centered around men. 9 News sports reporter Ashley Moore has been watching the world of women's sports change throughout the years, both as a fan and a journalist. So we sat down to talk with her about it.
So obviously the advancements and the state of women's sports right now is not always how it's always been, right? Tell us a little bit about what barriers women athletes faced in the past.
I mean, you see the growth of certain sports now, the National Women's Soccer League, the WNBA #1.
Right.
I remember being a fan of the WNBA and people would be like, why are you watching that? Nobody watches women's sports.
Of
And then you
course.
have that conversation about how women's players should make more like the WNBA, and the response was always, well, nobody watches the WNBA. And I'm like, but people do watch the WNBA. It's the fact that you have to give us the same platforms as other people. So I was watching the WNBA back in a time where you had to watch certain channels, the middle of the day in the summer.
Right, you had to really look for it.
Right, you had to
Yeah.
really look for the
Yeah.
game. Yes,
Right.
yes, you did. And, a lot of people were watching, but you had to work to watch. Now ESPN has picked up the WNBA, TNT has picked up the WNBA, and now people are actually watching because it's so accessible. Now they're like, oh, let's give you billions of dollars in TV rights and TV deals. And now everybody's like, oh, the WNBA has gotten better. And it's like, it hasn't gotten better. It's just that,
been good.
right, it's
It's
just that
been
more
great.
people are watching, and I think that's the biggest thing happening today, because the WNBA is only 28 years old.
Right.
Lisa Leslie, first girl to dunk in a basketball game. Now we're seeing it on a college level, professional, but it's always been this good. We're
Right.
just now getting the recognition that we deserve and that the women deserve who have been on that stage. But I mean, women's sports have always been good.
What are some of the biggest strides that we've made to date, and what do you expect? What are you optimistic about moving forward into the future?
Strides made to date. I mean, the women's national soccer team. You like soccer.
I do. Mostly when it's Colombian soccer. Of course, but I do, yes.
But you know how dominant those women have been for the last few decades.
Oh, yeah.
More dominant than the men.
Huge.
Huge.
They're so good.
And a couple of years ago is when it was, oh, the women don't make more than the men, but they make it further than the men in the World Cup every year. You know what I mean?
Make it make sense.
Right.
Right.
So now sponsorships are starting to be paid to women more money. The leagues are starting to give the women more money. The national team is starting to give the women more money. Those are strides we've made. In the WNBA, the CBA agreement is coming up, and that is what determines how much they make. It went viral that Caitlin Clark was only making $75,000 for her rookie contract.
Yeah.
Well, that's about to change. They're about to make more money, but then years from now, they'll likely make more money. You know what I mean?
Right.
But one of the biggest things here locally is that Denver National Women's Soccer League investment, the stadium that they are building for those women.
It looks insane.
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 Better than the Rapid Stadium, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Totally agree. Hands down.
That's where we start.
Yeah.
We make these investments. They pay twice as much as any other team has ever paid for a National Women's Soccer League team. Okay.
Wow.
You make that investment, then you build around the stadium. You build a beautiful stadium, but you build around the stadium so that people want to be there. So that entertainment district that they're planning there. Like, the right people are making the right moves, and that's how we continue to advance the game. Make the stadiums as beautiful as the men, and people will want to show up. They'll want to be there.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope that people keep watching because women's sports has always been good. It's getting better. More people are kind of waking up. So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Ashley,
of
and
course.
sharing your expertise.
Oh,
We
no
love it.
problem at all.
We're headed for a break, but after we come back, we'll be taking a look at how the George Floyd case impacted the way journalists cover police stories in the 5 years since his murder. 2025 marked 5 years since the murder of George Floyd. On May 25, 2020, former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin used his knee to pin Floyd's neck to the pavement for 9.5 minutes, leading to his death. A tidal wave of racial justice protests erupted in the U.S. and the world following Floyd's death. Demonstrators chanted Floyd's dying words, "I can't breathe." His death left lasting impacts on how cities think about police reform and rebuilding. It also left its mark on journalism and how it altered how journalists approach police narratives. We spoke with Kent Erdahl at our sister station in Minneapolis about his reporting and the lessons learned after spending years covering Floyd's murder.
Yeah, there have been so many lessons, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, this was quite literally one of those events that we will all be kind of going back to as a reference point as journalists, as community members, anyone who is in this metropolitan area, in this state, really in this country, can remember where they were when this happened. And as all of this was unfolding in the days after the murder of George Floyd, and we saw the unrest lead to riots in some cases, into education in many other cases, it was constantly one of those things as a journalist where you're just trying to listen and learn and see everything as it unfolds, because, you know, I think many of us took a step back after George Floyd was killed and did a little bit of personal soul searching, no matter who you were.
Totally. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think, like you said, this was such an impactful situation that extended to many different spheres, including, of course, journalism. When it comes to your own reporting, ensuring that, you know, accountability and integrity are things that are prioritized, or in newsrooms as a whole across the country, how do you think that George Floyd's killing impacted the way that newsrooms cover stories that involve police, that involve the use of force, that involve kind of fact-checking information that is relayed to us by law enforcement?
Yeah, and it's a process that we were feeling and experiencing and trying to kind of understand. Even before the killing of George Floyd, we had several uses of force and police custody deaths here in Minnesota. Jamar Clark, Philando Castile, Justine Damon, all died in police custody or in use of force incidents, and led to a lot of also some public unrest and really opportunities for us to kind of take a hard look. But then the murder of George Floyd took it to another level, because as we followed the aftermath of that, I think what was so apparent so quickly was how different the police accounting of what happened in the moments, the morning after, saying he died of a medical emergency, to then the world seeing that video of what actually happened. It made it as clear as day to the general public and to us as media that what we hear from police is one story, and especially in those first few hours, we need to understand that needs to be talked about transparently, as this is the words coming from police, and people need to understand the context there. We learned a lot as a newsroom, and when we talk about what happened in the days after, there was so much anger being on the ground about that original reporting by police that we echoed, saying that this was a medical emergency for a few hours even, because there's then also just a clear truth that comes right after it, showing what happened. And you better believe that taught us a lot, and it was a tough lesson for us in just understanding how much we have to be transparent about where this information is coming from, and that a police version of events is exactly that, and that we have to do our best to find out and get to what truth is there.
During Black History Month, we took a moment to highlight a pivotal group often associated with the civil rights movement, the Black Panther Party. It formed in 1966, focused on Black nationalism, socialism, and armed self-defense. The group started in Oakland, California, but quickly grew beyond the state. The first chapter outside of California was authorized in Seattle. The party's legacy lives on with a new museum. Sharon Yu with our sister station in Seattle has that story.
Black berets, leather jackets, raised fists and guns. These are all striking images of the Black Panther Party. Formed in California in 1966, the revolutionary organization fought for Black power and protection.
We were the first chapter formed outside of the state of California.
Motivated by Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination and the killing of California Black Panther member Bobby Hutton by Oakland police, brothers Elmer and Aaron Dixon formed the Seattle chapter in 1968.
The Black Power movement was growing.
They rallied hundreds of locals to protect Black and brown communities.
Black Panthers up here with guns on the second floor.
The guns drew the attention of the federal government.
J. Edgar Hoover named us the #1 threat to the internal security of the United States. They called black hate groups. And so they assassinated Panthers. They attacked our offices. That's where the violence emanated from.
Their movement grew from self-defense to survival. They monitored police activity to protect Black residents.
That was our police alert patrol, where we armed ourselves with shotguns and law books to patrol police officers in our communities. We're coming up on the Panther office.
A quick tour of Seattle's Madrona neighborhood shows the group's impact beyond their right to bear arms.
That's where the Panther office was.
Their first office at 34th and East Union was just blocks away from the Dixon family home, where an idea turned into action. And in the backyard of that home, at this church, the Panthers fed hungry children.
2,000 kids a week, a hot breakfast out of 5 locations in Seattle, and thousands of kids across the country. We ended up embarrassing the federal government to launch free breakfast and free lunch programs. People think that it was the federal government that started that. It was the Black Panther Party that set that example. So we're headed to the People's Wall now.
Just a short drive from the church is their second office, commemorated by this mural at 20th and Spruce.
One of the things as I look on the wall, these are our fallen comrades that died here in Seattle. You'll see Carolyn Downs' name is up there.
The Carolyn Downs Family Medical Center is yet another legacy built to overcome health disparities.
We found out that the second highest infant mortality rate in the whole state of Washington was right here in the CD, which was 77% Black back then. We had no funds. We did it based on volunteers and donated materials. And we started a free medical clinic, and today it is still running.
It's humbling, it really is.
Brandy Taylor is the CEO of Seattle Roots Community Health, which runs Carolyn Downs.
I think about what they went through to keep those doors open for so long. It's powerful.
Taylor says the spirit of free healthcare for all resonates decades later. The clinic has more than 60,000 patient visits a year. Remembering the past is a vital part of that care.
Part of orientation for every employee, we're going to tell you what our history is. I don't know that I've seen anyone come in and not appreciate and really lean into that.
Nearly 50 years after the Seattle Black Panther Party disbanded, what's next?
We're building an interpretive and research center, Black Panther Party Seattle chapter.
Not far from its old stomping grounds of Madrona, at the corner of Yesler and 2nd, will be a way to share that history with the community.
The idea is to have a place where people, particularly young people, can come and learn about revolutionary movements, including the Black Panther Party, study and observe history. I think the spirit of the Black Panther Party is relevant today, that can guide the development of a new organizations that can speak to the needs of the community.
With photojournalist Rachel Kim for Facing Race, Sharon Yu, King 5 News.
And to talk about this story, we have King 5 reporter Sharon Yu joining us today all the way from Seattle. How's it going, Sharon?
Hey, Antonia, good to see you, and thanks for running our story. It's going great over here.
Of course, thank you so much for chatting with us. I think stories like this one are crucial, especially as we see pushes to not tell similar aspects of history. But I'm curious, as a reporter, what called you to this particular story?
Yeah, so I reached out to Mr. Dixon Elmer, and I asked him if he wanted to do a Black History Month story, because I think it does bring different reactions when we reach out to different communities and we're like, hey, we want to do a story on your community for this month. Then maybe some folks don't want to do that. But Mr. Dixon was very open to it, especially because they are opening that museum and interpretive center, and they want to kind of get the word out. So he was down for it and was so gracious with his time. And he also wanted to make sure the reason why they have this museum and interpretive center in the works is so that the history isn't forgotten and the young people get a chance to learn from it as well.
That's awesome. I just think that's so important. And I'm curious, are there any fun facts or interesting tidbits that maybe didn't make your reporting that you'd want to highlight?
Yeah, I really want to highlight the fact that the Dixon family, so Mr. Dixon's mother, she actually passed away not too long ago, but she has just kind of been highlighted as the matriarch of the family. All of this was kind of brewed out of the Dixon family home, and I think we have to highlight the fact that yes, this mom was hosting a bunch of people. They had people coming in and out of their home, and it was just kind of the starting ground of all of this. So, and she was gracious. She contributed to the free breakfast program. She was cooking for the kids, and so it's kind of an underrated piece of history that we weren't able to include because unfortunately she did pass away.
And wrapping up, our favorite producer picks is something that's certain to keep on appearing in the news and everywhere else, AI. There's been tons of headlines about AI this year, from people falling in love with them to every company under the sun adding an AI feature to its website, or writers being fired for using AI to create lists of books that don't actually exist.
As the tech gains more popularity, lots of people are turning to it for help with their mental health, prompting concerns from professionals about AI's ability to actually help people. Antonia sat down with 9 News mental health expert Cheryl Ziegler to break down exactly why professionals in the field are worried about this.
There's a few things that I think are commonly known that quote unquote favor the use of AI as therapy when comparing it to traditional therapy, such as like affordability and the fact that you can get pretty much instant assistance. But I'd like to know what you think some of the benefits of using AI could be from a mental health professional's perspective.
Yeah, I think some of the things that people could get out of using AI is basically a sense of, hey, this cluster of symptoms or things that I'm feeling, what do you think about them? What should I do with them? Should I seek out treatment? What type of treatment should I seek out? I think you can ask it those kinds of questions. I think what's really important to understand is that whatever it suggests, you then want to run by an actual licensed professional. So if you look at like usually any language model, I'll just say ChatGPT, it usually says on the bottom, double check these answers. I can be wrong.
Is there anything that concerns you about this trend of using AI for therapy?
I mean, I have major concerns about AI and the amount of information, even personal information that we're giving it. I'm concerned about privacy and security in that way. I'm then concerned about people not seeking appropriate treatment because they feel like, well, I'm engaged in something that feels good to me right now. And I can see that being the next dopamine hit. I can type anything in and I'm going to get an excellent answer. That is giving me a dopamine hit. So I think the third piece is that blurred line between artificial intelligence and human intelligence. I think if you interact with this, it doesn't even take that long. There really are some blurred lines, and it concerns me that people who are lonely or not connected well with others are then going to potentially get even more addicted to their screens and their AI as a way to fill up a very human need for connection.
Something that I've thought of that concerns me is that therapists are trained to look for warning signs that someone might be a danger to themselves or others and kind of take action. And AI can't do that.
There are behavioral health apps. So if you like this model of technology for the multitude of reasons, the ease, the cost, all those things, just use it to find a platform where it is trained, even if it's a bot, it is trained to look for some warning signs. There really are a lot of reasons why you should go see an actual person. I think that AI can be great for like something like I said, hey, I'm having a hard day today. What are 5 things that could help get me in a better mood? I think when it's really what we call episodic and acute, which means it's just happening today. It's just this moment. It's just a little blip like, oh, that made me really mad, or I woke up in this mood. Maybe check it out, see what's there. But anything that goes on, honestly, past just a day or two, that's where you really do want to go see a licensed clinical professional.
Thanks for joining Josue and I on this week's Culture Report. We hope you had as much fun as we did. We'll be back to continue the conversation right here on 9 News Plus and 9news.com.